Very good evening to everyone. Now it is time for the valedictory session. So may I request you to invite Professor S. Mahendra Dev and Professor Sudipto Mandal, Professor Martha Chen, Professor Nagesh Kumar, Professor Kunal Sen to be on the dais, and Professor Prajapati. May I request Professor Prajapati to chair the session? Sir.
Well, thank you very much. This is truly a case of greatness being thrust on me, so fill in the blanks. My name is Prajapati Trivedi, and I will be guiding the session or helping it move along. That's the job I have been given. And so we will start with the valedictory address by Mr. Mahendra Dev, who many of you know, if not most. He's the chairman right now of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister. Professor Mahendra Dev is presently chairman, Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister, as I said. He was the director and vice chancellor, Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research in Mumbai for 12 years, during 2010 to 2022. Prior to this position, he was chairman of the Commission for Agriculture Costs and Prices, Ministry of Agriculture, from 2008 to 2010. That is for 2 years. He was vice chairman of the Board of Trustees of International Food Policy Research Institute, Washington, D.C. He was member and acting chairman of the National Statistical Commission, Government of India. Professor Dev got the prestigious Malcolm Adisessia Award in 2016. He has written or edited 23 books and has around 150 research publications in national and international journals in the areas of agricultural development, poverty, and public policy, inequality, food security, nutrition, employment guarantee schemes, social security, farm and non-farm employment. He has been a consultant and advisor to many international organizations, such as UNDP, World Bank, International Food Policy Research Institute, UNESCO, ILO, FAO, ISCAP, UNICEF, DFID, and OECD. He is also a member of several committees of NITI Aayog. So it is my great pleasure to ask Professor S. Mahendra Dev to give his comments.
Yeah, thank you. So all the dignitaries on the dais, also many of the people I know here, and friends. So first let me thank the UNU IDER and ISAD for inviting me to deliver this address. The theme of the conference, the green industrialization and inclusive growth in a fractured world, is both timely and also deeply consequential. In this context, I'll be speaking more on India, Indian economy, and also government's approach on industrialization, particularly on green industrialization, also on inclusive growth. So on this, among other things, I focus on energy security and policies. As you all know, that there are several persistent global headwinds characterized by geopolitical fragmentation, volatile financial conditions, vulnerabilities in supply chains, and elevated global uncertainty due to the recent wars and tariff shocks. So a new fractured or multipolar global world is emerging, and multilateral institutions like rule-based WTO have been weakened. There is also continuous demand to reform multilateral development banks like the IMF and the World Bank. But India played an important role in global leadership in G20 and BRICS in the last decade. So the need for more South-South cooperation is being recognized now. I think in the conference also must have discussed this South-South cooperation. On manufacturing, the external context for building manufacturing has changed dramatically. Now globally, industrial policy has emerged as a central tool for economic strategy. In fact, the number of industrial policy interventions globally have shot up from 52 in 2012 to almost 1,500 in 2022. Thus, the resurgence of industrial policy across both developed and developing countries marks a significant shift in economic strategy. So India's answer to global turmoil in terms of wars and tariff shocks and protection in manufacturing is the self-reliant India. We call it Atmanirbhar Bharat, and has undertaken a lot of domestic reforms, including ease of doing business and deregulation. So self-reliance doesn't mean that we are going back to import substitution policies. The focus is on strategic manufacturing, improve the competitiveness for producing quality products for domestic consumption and exports. So given industrialization is part of the, green industrialization is part of the overall strategy on manufacturing. Also, India's macroeconomic resilience is anchored in strong domestic demand, sustained public investment, and a steady commitment to structural reforms. You can see India's real GDP growth this year, FY26, is about 7.6%. So importantly, the growth momentum is not merely cyclical. It also reflects deeper commitment to economic and environmental sustainability and balancing fiscal prudence, inclusive development, and productivity enhancing reforms. So this integrated approach positions India not only to sustain high growth in the near term, but to translate this into long-term global economic leadership. So recent geopolitical developments from the recent conflicts in the Middle East and West Asia affecting global energy markets and supply chains have, however, underscored the fragility of the global economic system and has impact on global energy security, and energy prices of crude oil and gas have increased significantly. So these events have brought renewed focus on one fundamental truth. One is that energy security is central to sustained, resilient, and inclusive economic growth. So India's policy approach has evolved precisely in response to this reality. So it is characterized by a careful balancing of two objectives. One is ensuring reliable and affordable energy to fuel growth and also equity. Second, advancing a decisive transition towards cleaner and more sustainable energy systems. So this dual commitment is clearly articulated in India's climate strategy. At COP26, India announced the so-called the Panchamrut commitments, that is the nectar of 5, which provide a comprehensive framework for climate action. So for example, meeting 50% of energy requirements from renewable source by 2030 and lowering carbon intensity of GDP by 45% from 2005 levels, and lastly, achieving net zero emissions by 2070. So these commitments are not merely environmental targets, they are deeply embedded in India's development strategy. So they recognize that future competitiveness will increasingly depend on energy efficiency, low carbon production systems, and leadership in clean technologies. So over the past decade, for example, India's primary energy supply increased by 30%. Yet what is particularly noteworthy is that the expansion has been accompanied by decline in energy intensity. So energy intensity has declined. So this reflects improvements in technology, changes in sectoral composition, and policy-driven efficiency gains. However, the composition of energy consumption reveals the scale of challenges ahead. Still, fossil fuels continue to dominate India's energy mix. Non-fossil fuels is growing, but share has to be increased further. So this dual reality of rising efficiency alongside continued fossil dependence defines the core challenge of India's green transition. At the same time, the per capita energy consumption remains relatively low. Electricity consumption stands around 1400 kilowatt hours per person, well below the global average of nearly 3800 kilowatt hours, and significantly lower than the advanced countries. So the policy challenge, therefore, is not to constrain energy demand, but to shape its trajectory. So India is planning rapid expansion in energy use, particularly through electrification, while ensuring that this incremental demand is met through clean and sustainable sources. So this includes electrification of transport through electric vehicles, adoption of clean cooking solutions, and electrification of industrial processes. So there, industry lies at the heart of this transformation. So sectors such as steel, cement, chemicals, and MSMEs account for a significant share of energy consumption and emissions. Therefore, green industrialization must fundamentally focus on transforming industrial production systems. So India's approach to industrial decarbonization is structured around 5 key pillars. The first pillar is energy efficiency. Initiatives such as the Perform, Achieve, and Trade (PAT) scheme have introduced market-based mechanisms to incentivize reductions in energy consumption. The second pillar is electrification of industrial processes. As renewable energy capacity expands, industries are increasingly able to access low-carbon electricity. The third pillar is the adoption of alternative fuels, particularly green hydrogen. The National Green Hydrogen Mission represents a transformative step with a target of producing 5 million metric tons by 2030. Of course, and also focus on solar PV manufacturing. The fourth pillar is circular economy and resource efficiency. Policies such as the steel scrap recycling policy, co-processing of waste in cement kilns, are promoting rescue, reuse, recycling, and recovery. Somebody was talking about the Banaskanta, the cooperative milk thing. They are also doing the circular kind of, economy kind of thing there in that district. The fifth pillar is carbon management and market mechanisms. The carbon credit trading scheme marks an important step towards establishing a domestic carbon market. So by assigning a price to carbon, it creates incentives for emission reduction and directs investment towards cleaner technologies. These national level efforts are further strengthened by state level initiatives. States such as Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Orissa, and some other states are aligning industrial policies with renewable energy expansion and promoting green hydrogen hubs and having sustainability into sectoral strategies. So this cooperative federal approach is essential for scaling green industrialization across a diverse economy. In fact, financial sector is also promoting green industrialization. For example, in a private bank, I was an independent director. I was chairing the committee on ESG, Environment, Social, and Governance Committee. So we had targets in the bank, also bank credit to reduce finance on carbon intensive sectors like coal, steel, and increase finances to less carbon emission or green industries. However, uh, green industrialization is not merely about technology or emissions. It is fundamentally about inclusive growth. So in a fractured world order, where global inequalities are widening and economic fragmentation is increasing, growth must be broad-based and equitable. So India's approach recognizes this objective. So I have worked on inclusive growth for several years. Conceptually, clarity on inclusive growth is important. There are three concepts. I think Ravi Kanpur and others also talked about this. One is pro-poor growth. Pro-poor growth means reduced income poverty. It doesn't talk about inequalities. The inclusive growth, according to them, is the reduced income poverty and income inequality. So it doesn't talk about human development. So third one is inclusive development, improving both income equity as well as the human development like health and education. So the last one is the much broader one, inclusive development. In fact, SDGs are closer to this inclusive development. So, in fact, in one of my books on inclusive growth, I have developed this concept further. So, according to me, providing quality employment is the main element of inclusive growth. Similarly, of course, reducing poverty and inequality and improving human development like health education are the other elements of this inclusive growth. And financial inclusion, social protection are also part of this inclusive growth. So creating quality employment to everyone can reduce poverty and inequalities. The structural transformation from agriculture to industry and services, particularly labor-intensive manufacturing, is very important. So how do we use green industrialization to improve employment is another issue. So I feel on green industrialization, there will be demand for low-skilled as well as semi and high-skilled workers. So in the transition to green energy and industrialization, we may lose some jobs, but we may gain much more. So worker reskilling, social safety nets, regional development programs are part of this inclusive policies. And turning to MSMEs, which form the backbone of employment and regional development, are being integrated into green transition through targeted policies, financing support, and cluster-based approaches. So at the same time, electrification and decentralized renewable energy systems are expanding access in rural areas, improving quality of life, and creating new economic opportunities. So the circular economy initiatives are generating livelihoods in recycling, waste management, and resource recovery. So sectors that are inherently inclusive and employment intensive. Thus, green industrialization is not a constraint on growth, rather it is a pathway to more resilient, equitable, and sustainable development. So at the global level, India's experience offers important lessons. So first, it demonstrates that development and decarbonization can be mutually reinforcing. With the right policy framework, it is possible to expand economic output while reducing environmental impact. Second, it highlights the importance of technological leapfrogging, including digital technology. As a late industrializer, India has the opportunity to adopt cleaner technologies without being locked into legacy systems. Third, it underscores the role of policy innovation and institutional coordination, from market-based mechanisms to cooperative federalism in driving large-scale transitions. However, global cooperation remains critical. Issues such as climate finance, technology transfer, and equitable trade rules will determine whether developing countries can pursue green industrialization without compromising their growth aspirations. At the G20 summit under India's presidency, leaders made commitments to the following. First, accelerate strong, sustainable, and inclusive growth. Second, pursue low carbon emissions, climate resilient, environmentally sustainable pathways. Third, address debt vulnerabilities in developing countries. Fourth, scale up financing from all sources for achieving SDGs. And reform also the multilateral development banks. And improve access to digital services and digital public infrastructure, which India is a pioneer in that. And also, of course, promoting sustainable and gainful employment. And lastly, they strengthen the voice of developing countries, including LDCs, into future G20 agenda and in global decision making. Similarly, BRICS Summit will be held in India in 2026. So India can play a leadership role in this South-South cooperation. So as we look ahead, India's priorities are clear: accelerating renewable energy deployment, deepening industrial decarbonization, strengthening carbon markets, and investing in innovation. At the same time, it is essential to ensure that transition remains just and inclusive, that is supporting workers, enterprises, and regions through this transformation. So it may be noted that green industrialization is not merely a policy agenda for India, it is a strategic necessity in a rapidly changing world. So it reflects a vision of development that is not only fast and large, but also sustainable, inclusive, and resilient. So in a fractured global order, the country has the opportunity to demonstrate that a different model of growth is possible, one that harmonizes economic ambition with environmental responsibility and national priorities with global commitments. So the journey ahead is complex, but the direction is clear. To conclude, for India, green industrialization offers a pathway to accelerating manufacturing growth, reduce import dependence on energy, create large-scale employment, and support climate commitments. So with the right mix of policy, innovation, and collective effort, India can not only achieve its developmental aspiration, including green industrialization, but also emerge as a global leader in shaping a sustainable and inclusive future. Thank you very much.
Come on. Thank you very much, Professor Mahendra Dev. Now we will have a few closing remarks. We will start with Professor Kunal Sen, Professor Martha Chen, and then end with Professor Nagesh Kumar. So, Professor Kunal Sen, thank you.
As we come to the end of the 2026 Wider Development Conference, let me begin by thanking you first for your participation, your ideas, your questions, and the generous spirit of exchange that we've seen in this venue and also on Wednesday in a different venue in the Habitat Center. It was really amazing to see this. This conference set out to examine quite a difficult and crucial agenda, as was mentioned by Professor Mahendra Dev: green industrialization and inclusive growth in a fractured world order. We discussed the pressures on global economic governance, discussed the constraints created by climate risk and finance gaps. We also discussed the policy choices the countries are facing right now as they pursue structural transformation. But also, probably more importantly, we heard a wide range of proposals, evidence, and practical approaches. That combination of realism and solution orientation is exactly what we hope for this conference to deliver, and I think we did. When I began as a director of VNU Wider in 2019, I said that economic transformation has to be accompanied by social transformation and political transformation, and if you want to see meaningful improvements in well-being. I believe then, and I believe even more now, that development is ultimately about transformation across these three dimensions. If anything, the themes that we set out at the beginning of my tenure at UNU Wider, transforming economies, transforming states, transforming societies, seem even more relevant today. Now I'd like to offer thanks in three different directions. First, to our partners and hosts, especially the Institute for Studies in Industrial Development, ISID, for the collaboration that made it possible to convene the conference in New Delhi, and for the warmth and professionalism that we saw extend to all of us in this room. Second, to our speakers, chairs, discussants, and presenters, into the many early career researchers and poster presenters that we have seen in this conference. The quality of the research and the seriousness of the policy engagement underline why the wider development conference remains a flagship platform for bringing evidence and practice together. I would also like to thank the chairs and discussants in the panel sessions for their patience, because we had to make changes to the program virtually at the last minute because of travel disruptions. And thank you so much for your patience and your good humor. Third, to the teams behind the scenes at UNE Wider and ISID, whose dedication and hard work made this gatherings like this possible. And I want to thank from UNE Wider's perspective 2 particular individuals who really have played a key role in organizing this conference. One is Kinga Jacob, right at the back, and there's Lumi Young somewhere there. You got to stand up. We can't see you if you don't stand up, okay? So Lumi and Kinga, please stand up. Along, of course, we are also supported by the Knowledge Mobilization Unit and the Operations Unit who are also here. You can see them all in this room and also outside. So they were absolutely amazing. But I do also want to thank from UNE Wider's side, the ISID team, and 3 individuals, again in particular, who played such an important role for this conference. One is Rezi Joseph standing is sitting right there. Rezi, thank you. Thank you so much. Jagat Chauhan, don't see him. There is Jagat. Jagat, please stand up. And Akshay Sharma, if Akshay is inside the room or not, I'm not sure. But I really have to say thanks from Wider's perspective, how much you both of all 3 of you worked so hard in the last few days, and perhaps even weeks. Thank you so much. On a personal note, this is my farewell conference as director of UNE Wider. It has been a privilege to lead an institution that combines intellectual ambition with a deep commitment to policy relevance and global partnerships. I'm especially grateful to my colleagues, including Patricia Justino sitting in front, and the senior leadership team for their collaboration, professionalism, and the sense of purpose. Institutions endure, people come and go, but they endure because of the work that is done by exceptional people, and UNUI is very fortunate to have such exceptional people. And what also gives me confidence for the future is not only those who are in UNE Wider, but the strength of our network. And this is very evident in this room and in the conference. The researchers, the policymakers, the partners gathered here, the challenges we face are significant, but so too is the collective capacity that we have as a network that is represented in this room. So before I close, just a few practical notes. We'll share the conference outputs in the coming weeks, including links to recorded plenary sessions. We recorded all the plenary sessions, and a new exciting blog series with Global Dev. This new series spotlights new research that happened in this conference, which you heard, that connects to the policy issues under discussion across conference sessions. So this particular set of blogs will come out in the next few weeks. So do check our website when these blogs come out, because they are really exciting. They've all been done by researchers who are here in this conference. You'll also receive a short participant survey. Very important for us to know how the conference went. We need this feedback to improve things. We always can think they do think conferences better. So please take a few minutes to complete this feedback, as it makes our conference even better and serve our community even better in the future. And finally, on logistics, there are some refreshments which will follow after this the Valedictory session, as indicated in the program. And then if you need support on onward travel arrangements of any other support, please speak with UNE Wider, or ISID staff will still be here after this session. So let me thank you once again for being part of this important conversation and contribute to the shared task at the heart of this conference: building evidence, building partnerships, and finding practical solutions for green and inclusive growth, even under very difficult global conditions. Thank you, and safe travels.
Can we request Professor Martha Chen, now chair of the wider board, affiliate Howard Mitchell Institute, co-founder and board member Vago, and a legend at Harvard.
Thank you. So, colleagues and friends, it feels sort of sad to have this exciting conference come to an end, but I am, on behalf of the wider board, I do want to thank some people. But first, let me say that over the past few days, I think we've really had a very rich conversation. I can say that every session I attended, I learned a lot. I began thinking in new ways. And I think the complex set of issues of the green transition, the inclusive growth, the fractured world, made even more fractured by the current war in the Middle East. I think we have dealt with very important topical topics, and I think we have brought together reasoned discussion, evidence, and thoughtful deliberation. So I think the conference was very timely and was very suited to the moment in our troubled world. On behalf of the wider board, I did want to thank our co-host, Nagesh Kumar, and his team for the excellent hospitality and logistical arrangements. And I wanted to thank the wider team also in the background who helped make all of this run so smoothly. But I also wanted to take time to recognize and thank Professor Kunal Sen for his leadership as the director of UNU Wider since 2019. As you have just heard, this is Kunal's last conference as director. I know he will be at other conferences, but as director. And over these years, he has guided the institution with what I would call intellectual clarity, very strong commitment to policy research, and a very clear sense of Wider's role in the world, in global development debates. Under his directorship, UNU Wider has continued to strengthen, its place in rigorous research, policy engagement, and international dialogue. And we are deeply grateful to his leadership. Thank you, Kunal. And just on a personal note, it's been very rewarding and easy and just sort of interpersonally a treat to work with Kunal as the chair over the last several years. He's been a delight to work with. But as one leadership comes to an end, we now look forward to the leadership of Patricia. Patricia, will you stand up? Patricia Justina, who's UNU Wider's deputy director and the director designate. And so she will be taking over on May 1. And Patricia has been part of the wider community since quite some time, and she has served at the Institute since 2019. She has a distinguished career behind that at IDS Sussex, one stretch at Harvard University, and she also shares this commitment to outstanding scholarship, to deep commitment to peace, equity, and research that can support policy action. Her work on the intersection of development, governance, and conflict speaks directly to many of the questions that we have addressed in this conference and that are needed in guiding us through this fractured time that we live in. And I know she will lead the Institute with wisdom, integrity, and vision. And so I really want to welcome you, Patricia, to the new role and to wish you all the best going forward. And finally, I just do want to thank all the presenters, the chairs, the speakers, the discussants, and all of the participants in this conference. It's been a pleasure to get to know some of you for the first time, and it's been a real pleasure to see many of you again. So thank you very much.
And finally, it's Professor Nagesh Kumar, who is known for doing the impossible.
Thank you, Chair. Professor Prajapati Trivedi, our very distinguished member of ISID board and Harvard professor, and our chief guest for this afternoon, my very dear friend, Professor Mahendra Dev, Professor Marty Chen, the chairperson of wider board, my colleague and friend, Professor Kunal Sen, all the distinguished people, our common teacher, Mahendra's and I, Professor Kaushik Basu, and all of the very distinguished friends who are still here after 2.5 days of very intense, very engaging discussions. I think it was our privilege to host this wider conference, and first time in India. I thought it must have been somewhere in India before, but it wasn't. And so it was a special privilege to host this conference in ISIT and in our 40th year, in the year of India's BRICS presidency. So as we discussed on the first day, there's so many regions to feel very happy and proud. And to have a theme, as Professor Mahendra Dev elaborated in his talk, Valedictory talk, that how green industrialization and inclusion and inclusive growth can be the way forward for the humanity and for developing and developed countries together, and global cooperation would be needed to drive that. It was a very beautiful formulation, Mahendra. I must compliment you to comprehend the three themes: the green industrialization, inclusive growth, and in the fractured global order. You merged them and integrated them in such a nice manner that it begins to make sense to most people, because people were wondering why this theme, and you have really given a very nice definition to that. So I really want to add my words of thanks to every one of you on this last session, but to the speakers and chairpersons and discussants of all the sessions, and there were quite a few, and all of the participants, who contributed to the richness of discussion. And I think we at ISID we will remember it for a very long time. This pleasure and privilege of hosting such an interesting conference, which was so fruitful, and the conversations with so many of you, making friends with so many of you, and meeting some of the old friends and reviving our contacts. So for that, I think we need to be really grateful to wider board under your leadership, Martha, and to Kunal and rest of the wider team. And we really worked very seamlessly across the continent, and day-night exchange back and forth of so our team and wider team working together very seamlessly to make it happen. I was really sitting with fingers crossed whether everything will go well, including some visas, and everything finally went well, except for the war, which disrupted some travel schedules, and we lost some participants. And but I think more or less we whatever we had in mind was delivered by all of you. So I think thanks are in order to all the participants, as I said earlier, and I want to thank colleagues from wider team. Kunal has done his bit, but I want to also add our words of working with you was a real pleasure. And in ISID, practically everybody was involved. So I would not be listing everyone, but just to identify a couple of individuals, as Kunal also did earlier. So the coordination by Reggie, the committee led by Reggie Joseph, and comprising Rama and Akhilesh. Maybe you stand up, please, and we give them a very big hand. So they coordinated with rest of the faculty members and our PhD students, some very bright PhD students who are part of ISID life. And to the admin side team led by our, very able finance and admin head in Mr. Jagat Singh Chauhan. So can you please stand up? And also, so everyone, has contributed, but they were the leaders, and so the leaders should pass on the message and how, sincerely we were grateful to everybody's work. So on that note, we really come to an end of this very engaging, very powerful conversation, and I hope we can remain in touch with many of you over the years. Thank you very much indeed.